So, Dr. Jack Pransky, thank you very, very much indeed for agreeing to be a part of the summit and allowing me to speak to you today. So, we are going to be talking about the three principles, the best kept secret in well-being, and we'll discuss what we mean by that as we go through, I hope. But just to let participants know a little bit about you, in case they haven't heard of you and the three principles, I'd like to just give a little bit of intro and your bio, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, because I'm the best kept secret.
Not anymore. So, Jack, you're a three principles author, trainer and practitioner, a coach of coaches and a counsellor of counsellors. You are a national and international consultant, a speaker and author who has worked in the field of prevention and community organising since 1968. You have authored and co-authored a number of books such as Modello, A Story of Hope for the Inner City and Beyond, an inside-out model of prevention and resiliency in action. Somebody Should Have Told Us, Simple Truths for Living Well, Paradigm Shift, A History of the Three Principles, Parenting from the Heart, A Guide to the Essence of Parenting from the Inside Out, and your latest book, Seduced by Consciousness, A Life with the Three Principles. And you specialise in prevention from the inside out and specifically in the three principles, or health realisation as it's also known. So that's pretty good, and I have to say I'm about a third of the way through your latest book, which I'm loving, and I'm not just saying it. I think it's your best one yet. I think it describes the principles really, really well. I'm really, really enjoying it. So yeah, I hope.
I'm so glad.
Good. So without further ado, let's get started. So obviously, you know, what people would have heard a lot there is about principles, three principles. And I wonder if you could describe the three principles and just explain a little bit about Sid Banks and their kind of history, I guess, how Sid first described them and how they came to be what they are today.
Well, it sounds like an easy task, but it really isn't. I'm going to use names to describe the three principles, but the names don't mean anything. So it's because they're very spiritual, these principles, and it's what they're pointing to. And when I say principle, I'm not talking about principles of effective programs or anything like that. I'm talking about fundamental laws or truths that exist in the universe, whether we know about them or not. So that's the level that I'm talking about them on. And in order to really take them in, it would be very wise for people to take them in without seeing them through the filters of what they already know. So taking them in with like an empty vessel, like just a clear slate, and see what happens. So these three principles are universal mind, consciousness, and thought. Those are the three, and as names, they don't mean anything. But these principles are working every moment in everybody's life. You know, like gravity works every moment of everybody's life, holding us to the earth, whether we know about it or not. And that's the same way that these principles work in terms of our psychological/spiritual life. Any experience of life that we can possibly have, even though it looks like it comes from the outside world, it doesn't. It comes from the way we use, usually without knowing we're using them, these three principles. Actually, you put right before we started this, you pointed out something that was in my book to me, and it was an example that I used about something like, let's say somebody yells at us at work. Okay, so we could have an experience of being troubled by it. Yeah, oh no, you know, what do they think of me, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not doing well, and really get into a state of worry or anxiety about it. And that is that person's experience of it. We can be yelled at and have a thought, well, that's their problem. It's got nothing to do with me. They don't know what they're talking about. And we would feel neutral. That would be our experience of it. Or we could be yelled at and think, wow, this person must live in such a horrible world that, you know, they think that they have to yell at people to get by in life. That's crazy. And we can have compassion for them, and that becomes our experience. Or we could even feel grateful that we were yelled at because, for example, we might have wanted to get out of there anyway, or or grateful that we're not yelled at enough that much, or grateful that, you know, we have the rest of our life where we're not yelled at, or anything like that. So each one that I described, and those are just a few examples, each one becomes our experience of what happened to us from the outside world. And so universal mind has all possibilities attached. Like all possibilities exist within universal mind, because universal mind is the energy behind all life. And it's the life force within us that powers us up. And within it, all possibilities of what can possibly happen exist within it.
Yeah.
And then out of that, we get a thought. We have this incredible creative gift of the power of thought to come up with anything. We can come up with anything. Yeah. And we do. And then we have the power of consciousness, which takes whatever we're thinking, sends it right through our senses, and makes us feel it. So we would swear to the reality of it because we feel it so much. And that is all that's going on, basically, all the time, even though we're not aware of it. And we get bummed out because we think it's the outside world doing it to us. Like whether it's somebody who yelled at us, like that other example, or a circumstance that we grew up in our life, or a situation that we find ourselves in now. It only looks like it's the outside world doing it to us. But it's really the way we've used our own thinking coming into consciousness out of all the possibilities of mind. And that's what gives us our feelings, what we call our experience, what we call reality. And it's very humbling, really, when we catch on to this.
It's one of those things as well, isn't it? That I mean, I hear you talking about it, and thank you for sharing that example about you know, that if you get yelled at work and the different ways that we experience it is just you know, what we think about it. And I guess for me, I know when I first understood these principles, I got them on one level intellectually. And people do, because they make sense and you think, yeah, okay, I get that. But but it's experiencing them that enables us to really kind of feel them, I guess, and understand a really different level, isn't it?
That's true, because intellectually, it doesn't matter whether people know them intellectually.
Yeah.
But if people really can feel deep inside themselves that, wow, it really is me making it up.
Yeah.
I am making up my experience of life. Oh, that's like, it's not people doing things to me that's making me feel bad. It's me. You know, that's like, wow.
It really is. And I remember the first time I really got that. And I don't remember what it was over, but it was just a moment when the penny dropped. And I just remember being so excited because I suddenly thought, well, this is great. You know, that means I'm not at the mercy of the world.
Yes.
And I get to choose. I get to choose what happens. And it was literally like a light bulb moment where suddenly everything changed.
Yeah.
And
I just want to clarify something. It's not like we get to choose what happens.
no.
It's like we know that no matter what happens, there are always all these equal possibilities for how we can experience it. And we just have to, it's not like we're picking one over another or anything like that, because these things usually happen too quick for us to know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's however we see it, that's what we get. What we see is what we get.
Yeah.
And when we know that, it makes us wonder, like, what we're willing to put up for ourselves with, you know, in terms of what we get.
Mm.
I mean, we are in a position of creating a life of misery, anxiety, depression, bother, worry, all those things, or we're in a position of creating a life of joy, well-being, peace of mind, love. And the interesting thing about the ones I just mentioned is this is the other thing this is the other most amazing thing about the principles to me. We don't really have to do anything to be in a state of peace of mind and love and joy. Because if we weren't thinking the other stuff, we would be there automatically. And that to me is the most comforting thing that I know. That when our mind shuts down of all of its typical thinking, you could say, all of our typical habitual type, egoic type, fearful thinking, what's left as an experience but peace of mind, love, and it's like the pure incubator emptiness from which wisdom springs. So when our mind clears, we get these thoughts of wisdom in the form of insights that come up from out of the blue. We don't know where they come from, you know, but all you have to ask yourself is, where are you or what are you doing when you get your best ideas? And reflect on that, and people will, you'll see that it's when your mind calms down.
Absolutely. And I remember having a moment actually when I did my training with you, and I remember sharing this at the time, but it was exactly as you'd said it, about that innate well-being. And I remember someone was saying how they were always kind of looking, but if I can just, you know, find the thing, then I'll be okay. And I remember listening and kind of thinking, yeah, I do that. And I just, out of the blue, exactly what you said, out of that beautiful innate wisdom that's always there, I suddenly thought, oh, I'm actually okay. I'm always okay.
Yeah.
And I really, really got it in that moment, and realized that it's not something you have to go and look for. It is literally always there. It's just, if you can get past your thinking for a second, you can see it. And again,
I remember that moment, Julie. I do.
I think I burst into tears after sharing.
Yeah.
But it you know, it really, really touched me. And yeah, it's a wonderful thing. And I hope that, you know, that's what I'd like to get across to those listening, that these principles really can be kind of transformational, you know, when you can see them, and they're not something that you need to apply or do or whatever. They're something you experience. And
they're so much a part of us. Like we couldn't get away from them if we tried. So it's just a question of understanding them and understanding and seeing them so deeply that it's like, oh, of course it works this way.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. All we have to do is look inside ourselves and see if it works this way.
Yeah. I know when I talk to people about principles, and I've done it myself a million times because I'm in and out of my thinking constantly, and I found myself saying, and people will say, yeah, I totally understand that, but, and there's always a but where people say it doesn't apply, and it always does. And I wonder if you could kind of elaborate on that, and how you found that with people, and kind of how you talk to them about that. And
Well, when people say but, they're saying that there's an exception.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that there are no exceptions. So I want people to bring their butts on, you know. I want to know what people are thinking is an exception.
Yeah.
Like, what have you heard when you've heard buts?
Me personally, well, it tends to be where, you know, something bad has happened to someone, something that has been very painful or violent or unpleasant, or just something that's been very difficult for them to deal with, and they know that, you know, in their hearts that it's been an awful experience, and I guess especially where it's something that they know is no fault of their own, and that they couldn't, you know, something that happened and it was out of their control, and they say, but this happened and that made me feel bad, you know, it was the event. You see it as the event.
Right. Well, so my house just went through the hurricane in Florida.
Yeah.
Just Hurricane Irma. And I have been away from my house for like 3.5 months. And as it looked like the eye was approaching, and that it was going to go right over the top of it,
Yeah.
and I wasn't there to do anything, I suddenly had the thought, uh-oh. Like, okay, am I supposed to prepare for a flood? Or am I supposed to prepare for a tree going through my 3 sets of glass doors, sliding glass doors?
Yeah.
You know, so you got to get everything off your floor. If it's a tree going through your glass doors, it's like it brings the hurricane right into your house, and so you need everything in a closet, or, you know, locked away as much as possible. I didn't know which one of those things was more likely to occur. So I started worrying about it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute. I have a neighbor who's like looking at my house. So I had her get the things off my back porch, and, you know, that could possibly blow around and blow through a window or something like that. And then I just thought, well, I'm going to guess. Consulting with her, I'm guessing that there's less of a likelihood of a flood than something blowing through my glass doors. So I'm going to put my stuff in the closets, even on the floor, you know, where if there is a flood, I've had. And then I thought to myself, that's all I can do. Like, what is the sense of worrying about it? Because whatever happens is going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I could spend my days worrying about the worst that could happen, and where would it get me?
Yeah.
I would be totally bummed out for nothing, because in effect, what really happened is the storm veered to the west, and the eye didn't go over my house. And I found out that my house did not get any damage. And already the power's back on. So I would have spent all that worry for nothing. Now, let's say the worst happened and the eye did go over my house and I did get both a flood and and something went through my glass doors.
Mm.
Well, would worrying beforehand have helped?
No.
You know, and now, will worrying about it now help?
No.
Or do I just have to take it upon myself to do what I have to do to get myself back together again?
Yeah.
So it's all that is thought. And most of it, I'm not aware that I'm thinking because it's behind the scenes. It's talking in the back of my head.
Yeah.
But no matter what it is that I'm thinking, that's what I'm going to end up experiencing. So it looks like the hurricane is going to cause me misery, when really it's whatever I'm thinking about the hurricane and what happened to my stuff that is going to cause me misery. And you can see, you know, if you look at people whose lives have been ravaged by some natural disaster, and you know, you'll see that people are all over the map with how they deal with stuff. Some people believe their life is ruined, and some people live in the gratefulness that they're still alive and whatever they have left is fine with them. You know, and there's all these levels in between. So we decide which level we end up on, and usually without being aware that we're deciding it.
Yeah. I thank you for sharing that, Jack. I had an experience this last week as well, in just something that came up that really highlighted to me some of my thinking. And my neighbour came round last week and said, just wanted to let you know I'm going to build another house in my garden. And I kind of was like, what? How big? He said, well, big. And I love my garden. You know, my garden is my haven, and his house is higher than mine. And I just thought, this is awful. I'm going to be overlooked. You know, so my thinking started, and it really started. It really started. And and as far as I was concerned, he had done this. He had come around, and him saying he's going to build a house had changed everything, and that had upset my well-being and so on. And after a couple of hours of real ranting, I suddenly thought, God, I can't listen to this anymore. And I thought, okay, let's look at this. And I could see that it wasn't what he said about the house. The house isn't built, you know. All this upset is all of my own doing instantly.
Yes.
You know, it's not him. He's told me something that I don't think, you know, I think angrily about, and that's completely my experience of it. And it was so lovely to kind of go, okay, I see this happening, I notice it. And it has come up several times. You know, I wake up in the morning and I start ranting again. I start having that conversation about what I'm going to say. And then I just have to think, oh, this is ridiculous. And I just kind of let it go and you know, notice. And it's so funny, isn't it? How sometimes it's the big things that we can get so sucked into. And yet, if we can just take that moment to just think, is this helping?
That's why I called my book Seduced by Consciousness.
Yeah.
Is a seduction.
Yeah.
It really is. And when our thinking does get sent right through the senses, it really feels like truth.
Yes.
But it isn't truth with a capital T. It's truth with a small t with quotes around it. We're deciding what is truth for us. And you know, within the three principles, we're not saying that there's a right or wrong way to think. We're not saying there's a good or bad way to think. We're saying that whatever we think is what we get in the form of an experience, period. That's it. It's just a description of how things work. And it's so easy to fall into the trap that you described, that you fell into. As much as we know this stuff. I mean, I do it all the time. I forget and then I wake up. And I forget and then I wake up. but I'm grateful for the fact that I can wake up.
Yeah.
Because I know how it works.
Yeah.
I'll forget in a moment and then I'll wake up.
And so how do people wake up? How, what's the easiest way to start seeing this in action?
The easiest way. Well, I would say listening, by watching. Because one thing about the three principles that unnerves some people is that there are no techniques. There's nothing to do. There's just opening our eyes to how it really works. So as self-serving as this sounds, you can read my book, Somebody Should Have Told Us, or Seduced by Consciousness, which is a way to see how it all works. And to go to the source of it, which is Sydney Banks, who has also written a few books, and like, for example, The Missing Link. And just keep reading, keep listening. There are some videos and audio files out there, and there's a site called Three Principles Movies that where a lot of people who have gained this understanding are talking. And so it's just a question of exposing ourselves to it. The more we expose ourselves to it, the more we have, the better the opportunity is for us to see it deeply within ourselves through our own insights. And that's what I would say to that.
Thank you. I know the way I approach it. It's like you say, it's not an approach or a technique. It's a kind of way of being, isn't it? It's just a kind of noticing in every moment, but kind of for me, it is noticing. And what I tend to notice and what I tune into is how I feel. And as soon as I don't feel great, I think, oh, okay. And that's my sort of cue to just stop and take a moment and see if I can really see the situation, or just see a different perspective or gain an insight. And sometimes I can't. But a lot of the time I do. And it might only be for a short time, but that's something that certainly helps me. It's that noticing and just knowing that your feelings are always telling you what your thinking's doing.
Yes, and that's the important part of that, is that when we feel something, like if we feel anxiety or jealousy or whatever it might be, whatever the emotion that we feel, it means our thinking is working in such a way that we're getting that feeling. That's what the feeling means. We are using our thinking in a way, being picked up by consciousness in a way that is giving us. And if we weren't thinking it, we wouldn't be feeling this.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really humbling,
Yeah, and it's so lovely to see it in action, isn't it? Sometimes it can be really funny to kind of go, oh, I see it, when you have something.
So, let me just say, I'm looking at the tapestry behind your head.
Yeah.
And I think it's a tapestry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how this started. Like Sid Banks.
Yeah.
Ordinary guy going about his business, not a very happy person. Out of nowhere, he sees how it all works. Like in a sense, he saw how the three principles work in every aspect of our lives. And so, boom, this amazing experience of enlightenment happened to him. And then all those little dots around the center circle. So then he started to talk to people about what he saw. And then they caught on to what he was talking about. And then those things that are going out, they then started talking to other people, and then that's how this whole thing has spread right from the beginning.
But then why do you think it's still the best kept secret in well-being, as we've called it? Because I know you said it in your book, Seduced by Consciousness, how you were very much on a spiritual path, and then when you learned and understood the principles, it wasn't anything that you needed to sort of keep looking for. You found it, and that's absolutely been my experience as well. It's once I found this, it was like, for me, it's been like the highest truth, and there's nothing else that I need to look for on top of that. It always comes back to this, and the answers are always there if I just understand where my experience is coming from. Mm-hmm. And so why do you think that more people don't know about it?
Well, a good example is, a lot of people know of The Secret, which came out some number of years ago, made a huge splash, and now where is it?
Yeah.
It's like, this is different. It takes hold one person at a time.
Yeah.
Takes hold solidly within them, one person at a time. It grows very slowly. Yeah. But as it's growing, it is very solidly in place in people's lives. And, when people gain a deep enough understanding of it, it takes hold of you. I mean, it's just, that's what it is. It's just part of your life, and you couldn't get rid of it even if you wanted to. Mm. And so the question is, it just hasn't reached a critical mass yet. Mm. Someday it will. I have no doubt in my mind. It might not be in my lifetime. I'm getting old. It might not be in my lifetime, but at some point it's going to reach a critical mass, because this is truth about the way things work. Yeah. And, I don't expect people to say, "Oh, he's saying it's truth," but, it doesn't matter. I'm not telling anybody to believe me. Yeah. When people see it, they see how it works within themselves, and that becomes their truth. Yeah. And they see it, and you can't truly see this and then see exceptions.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. So we're nearing the end of our interview. So I wonder if we could sort of. I know. I could talk about this for a lot longer.
Yeah.
But maybe just to finish by saying, the premise of this summit is about, it's called Breaking Through the Void, because we seem to be living in very uncertain times right now, and it can feel really uncomfortable for people to see all this change and uncertainty, and when things aren't just working as they always have done, things are slightly different. And of course, we're going through all of the weather phenomenon that we're experiencing right now. You've just said about Irma that's just gone through, and Harvey, and these catastrophic floods in Asia. And then we've got things like American and British politics, which, for want of a better word, feels bonkers right now. Yeah. And, this can really make people feel unsettled and so on. So how can people use the principles to, when they're faced with that sort of worldview, what would you say?
Well, the first thing is to realize that no matter what craziness is happening in the world, whether it's person-made or whatever,
yeah,
it can only affect our well-being to the extent that we allow it to affect our well-being with our own thinking. Now, that is separate from anything we might want to do to stop the craziness. Mm. So there's things that people, what would wisdom tell us to do? Wisdom is always speaking to us. We just can't hear it because of all this crazy thinking that's going on in our head. But so when we calm down, all right, what can I do about global warming? What is the best thing that I can do about it? Allow wisdom to speak to me. What can I do individually? What can I do in my community? What can I do globally? It's a totally separate issue than how we end up getting affected by it. You know, we get affected by it because of whatever way we think about it. In fact, it was thinking that got us into this problem in the first place. You know, and it's going to be thinking that gets us, but not thinking from the same level that we created the problem. It's going to take wisdom to get us out of this. And when I realized that I could separate out feeling angry about it, or feeling worried about it, or feeling depressed about it, separate that out from whatever action I would be guided to take through wisdom, everything made a lot more sense to me. Like, it doesn't make sense to get brought down by it, because by being brought down by it, or being angry about it, or, you know, it's not doing anything to solve the problem. It's just on top of the problem, we get bummed out. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
What would wisdom say to us to do? That's how we can take action.
Yeah.
Right action.
Yeah. Well, I think those are pretty lovely words to end on, actually. What would wisdom tell us to do? I think I'd like to leave people with that. So, Jack, thank you. A beautiful discussion about the principles. As always, you just describe it so, in such a heartfelt way. It's a pleasure to listen to. I know people will want to find out more about it after that. I know I would if I was listening. So I will include, or have included, a link to your website on the speaker bio page, and to the other resources that you said about, like Three Principles movies and so on. And just to say, I would recommend to anyone that read one of your books, or one of the other books by any of the sort of principles authors, because they'll enable people to just gain some insight and see it from their own perspective, and like you say, kind of open that door to seeing what is, you know. That's how it all starts. So thank you.
Right. Thank you. It's a pleasure. As always.
Thanks very much, Jack.
Okay. Bye-bye.